I'm Sam Asgharian, Chief Medical Officer for Thrive, an Exact Sciences company.
David Freeman. I'm the General Manager for Healthcare Analytics Solutions for Quest Diagnostics. Quest has been around for about 50 years, and I think folks are very familiar with Quest Diagnostics as a diagnostic lab company, but perhaps less aware with how we're leveraging our relationships with patients, with hospitals, physicians, and our large database of patient connected in a longitudinal record, 56 billion lab events over 11 years, and our mobile care teams, which can go into the home and the workplace in clinical trials. And so, as you see on the slide, in the lower half of the slide, we have developed a set of capabilities to outreach directly to patients based on matching of those patients against inclusion-exclusion criteria that are set by a sponsor. We have relationships with physicians to help understand which clinicians are good fits from an investigator perspective, and to create recruitment funnels that really make those sites successful. That's the background, and those are the assets that we brought to bear in our collaboration with Thrive Exact Sciences. I'll turn it to you, Dr. Asgharian.
No, I appreciate that. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk through a lot of what we've been doing and what we've done together. At Thrive, we're an exact sciences company, so really focused on the detection and the diagnosis of cancer and preventing the deadly disease through novel technologies and innovative test solutions. So for us in particular, we're really working on a blood test that analyzes an individual's blood and is able to detect cancer earlier than traditional screening methodologies, and detects overall cancer, so multiple forms of cancer, some of which do not even have screening tests associated with them. As a result of being such a novel new entry into the field, we really have a large series of clinical trials that are testing and developing our assay and working really collaboratively across the geography to enroll patients and really make sure that we have the best and the safest test. The patients across the board are 50 to 75 years old, men and women. And in particular, what we really wanted to do last year was work on detecting how well we can look at cancer in cancer patients, but as well as avoiding positives in patients who do not have cancer. And so we were really working to enroll a large number of healthy patients in that 50 to 75-year range, so that we can make sure that our test really has the best sensitivity and specificity for when we bring it to market.
That's really exciting, this idea of moving earlier in disease processes to catch less acute patients. So that's great. And we're honored to participate in that. I wonder if you can speak to some of the challenges as you look to start that program.
You bet. It's a novel technology, and of course, what happens in the laboratory is very unique and groundbreaking. But the administration of it isn't. It's age-old administration. It's a blood draw, and so really, to get our samples into the lab, that's all we need. We need a simple consent, of course, in the normal clinical trial methodology. But then after that, it's a blood draw, the collection of the sample, and then it goes in for testing. Last year, we really needed about 1,000 healthy samples, something that normally takes very little amount of time. The complication that we faced, of course, was that we really kind of kicked off and needed to enroll during the height of the pandemic. And so with so many stay-at-home orders and really the risk to overall population safety, healthy people weren't out and about. Enrollment in any form of trial was really difficult. And so what we were tasked with was a novel way of thinking through how can we get that one critical sample through the blood draw into our lab in a way that isn't the norm. If folks aren't going to the clinic, but really would probably opt into something as simple as a blood draw, what's the opportunity and how do we do it? And that's where it was phenomenal to be able to collaborate and work with you and the team, because we really were able to find the right way to engage individuals and enroll in our trial. But that was really the situation and the complications that we faced.
Yeah. Even in non-pandemic times, there's a lot of time sensitivity about getting patients into the clinic because, that hurdle rate of effectively recruiting patients impacts the timeline and the costs and the complexity of a trial. For Quest, we really have tried to kind of flip the traditional model. Traditional models start with anchor investigative sites with PIs who are then given the task to outreach to their community and their prior patients and pull them in the door and then screen them to see if they match a particular protocol. Now, this one wasn't as complex because it's healthy patients, but traditionally 60% of the patients that come in the door through that top-down approach fail the pre-screen, and that's about 50% of the allocated budget for patient recruitment. So Quest really has a different approach, which is to look at that cohort profile and then start with known patients and ask patients, are you interested? And that, coming from Quest, which is a trusted brand, really helps us accelerate that process. And so, this is a little bit of the picture of what we encountered. I wonder if you could speak to the expectations that Thrive Exact Sciences had as we went into the planning for this program.
You bet. And, we really love the idea of saying, okay, if we try something completely novel and go into someone's home and say, that's where we want to be, and that reduces their risk, but of course increases their engagement. And especially in a time of a pandemic, we thought, well, very rarely are we going to have people opt into this. And it's going to be really hard. The barriers are difficult. Most importantly, too, we have to engage them in a non-personal way. And so how do we engage them? And so you can see that, right? Typical emails, right? The normal individual is getting dozens, if not hundreds of emails a day. So we really tried to open the aperture as wide as we could and say, how many millions of emails can we send, knowing that it's going to be very difficult to get people to open them, to get them to click through, to see what it is that they're opting into. Of course, it's a study. Of course, it involves somewhat of an invasive procedure in the blood draw. And then they have to fit the criteria too. So even if they say, hey, I want to do this, if their age is off of our criteria of 50 to 75, or if they had a recent history of cancer and really they don't fit in, we'd have to basically exclude them from the study. So we looked at it in that way and said, okay, in about 6 weeks' time, if we look at that vast of a funnel opening, we can get to our 1,000 consented and have those blood draws and eventually those samples if we hit our targets. And that was a big if when we really started this process.
So the expectations, about 5 million patients would need to be outreached to in a 6-week period to deliver those 1,000 patients. I believe that was based on your experience, your traditional experience on how these kinds of outreach programs work. And in fact, what we ended up delivering was we over-delivered, about 1,500 patients in 5 weeks. And I think that speaks to, our targeted approach and pre-screening patients. Patient recruitment is one part of the puzzle, and then patient retention is another part of the puzzle. The traditional model of moving patients to sites does, in fact, end up yielding a little bit of loss through the course of a trial. And sometimes, sites that are stood up don't get any patients, or they start to have attrition problems, and then that site no longer can contribute their data, which means that you sort of have to kind of overarm yourself with the number of sites and the number of patients that you go after. Does as the pandemic recedes, does this experience start to suggest maybe that there's something persistent here that you guys might carry forward in the future?
It does. And I think that's the phenomenal aspect of it. Having been in healthcare for so long, I had become accustomed to anemic numbers when it came to digital engagement. And you even look at the boom in telehealth that occurred in the pandemic period and the sustainability of that. The use case changes and there's more engagement. People previously were hesitant. To your point, it became kind of a reflex to go to the clinic, to go to a site, and to have that really become the norm and the expectation. I think that now the vast population has become now accustomed to something different. I can do this through the convenience of my own home. I can engage through the convenience of my own mobile device or my computer. And that direct connection creates a better stickiness, to your point, right? There isn't intermediary work here. We're going direct to the patients and the individuals. They have a direct line back to us. What was really unique about this is this was a purely observational study, meaning we just took the blood. There were no results that would be given. But the sheer volume of individuals who followed up and asked us for their results, right, knowing, hey, do you happen to have them, showed that there really is that retention capability, that they were really still engaged and wanted to know more. And the aspect of it that also helped us too, there was an incentive component, and folks could select either as a gift card for themselves or a donation to a cancer advocacy group. And a large population of them actually went the donation route. So that altruism continues to be something that we want to tap into in this kind of digital channel methodology, and continue to really think about ways of doing exactly what you described, engaging people and retaining that and prolonging that for a sustainable study.
My sense is that with the pandemic, it's accelerated our thinking with regard to, generalized acceptance of these new kind of clinical trial models. Is that your sense as well? And is that what you guys are contemplating as you think about the future of clinical trials?
Very much so. I think in our world, what we work very closely with the governing bodies on is the sample size, right? And you saw that with the pandemic and the vaccine trials. These are tens of thousands of people that need to be enrolled in these trials. And normally you would expect that to take years and years. And really, again, the pandemic gave us an incredible use case where if you can do this in a decentralized manner and you do it effectively, you do it safely, and you continue to persist to get your primary endpoints, you really shorten and accelerate that period of time. And that's incredible, right? A vaccine that looks at combating COVID that comes out in months is much more valuable than one that comes out in years. We feel exactly the same way about our breakthrough technology. The ability to detect multiple forms of cancer and ones that don't have any screening methodology is something we want available to physicians and their patients next year if we can get that, right? I mean, obviously our timeline's a little more expanded, but your point is one faster path to get there. And if we have those available faster paths, it's beneficial across the board, it's beneficial for the industry, and most importantly, it's beneficial for patient populations who can also be a part of this as they volunteer to help accelerate these timelines and get these new innovations to the market sooner.
There's a lot of talk about precision medicine, and precision medicine really is a gift, right? And it's amazing, right? But it's also a challenge from a clinical trial perspective in that you're needing, more and more precise populations to link to a trial. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts with regard to using data and sort of that flipped model of starting with known patients as opposed to kind of the anchor sites and the top-down model? Do you think that that's one of the things that can be done to help support this transition to precision medicine, and other things that you guys are thinking about?
I think you think about the older style of a clinical trial in a study, and you really didn't have analytics. You had reports, and those were always retrospective. They were after the fact, right? How am I doing was always dictated by some data that you got that said, well, here's how you were doing. And then you had to adjust and figure out, okay, if I change a few things, that should fix it. But you didn't know until the next report came out.
Right.
And so what you're describing is phenomenal. It's really prospective advanced analytics, right? How do I know where I'm going to go, and how do I forecast that? And really the availability of that data, or the linkage to it to other publicly available databases, where I basically say, to your point, if I know something about a precision oncology type of solution, how do I link that to publicly available databases and really look at incidence rates, and then use my database to say, that's where I want to go. And you're not so much targeting as you are enriching your population. And that gives you much more confidence that you're going to have a successful trial early on without the need to pivot or course correct once the data comes in. You're really looking at the data exactly as you described, proactively and in an advanced manner, and then initiating your study and really continuing to do that in a reforecasting model.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I really appreciate, Quest appreciates the opportunity to work with Thrive Exact Sciences. I think, the collaboration presents so much promise with regard to thinking about that kind of scenario planning for trial design and trial execution and cohort analytics. And, I think we're just at the beginning of the value chain here, and I look forward to continuing to work on this into the future. Thank you.